Well, I think we're ready to get started for the deep dive this morning. I want to say welcome to everybody joining us. It is Monday, June 17th, and welcome to the deep dive. If you saw the video this morning promoting the deep dive, we're going to be talking about the election and how that could affect the real estate market this year. This is a topic that many are interested in. It's a question that we get at Keeping Current Matters often, and it's gotten more frequently over the last couple of months as the election sort of bears down on us later this year. And I think as we, proceed through the second half of this year, this question is going to come up more and more. So we want to be ready for that when it does. As always, let us know where you are watching from. It's always so good to see everybody on Monday morning, on the deep dive, starting their week off talking about what's happening in real estate. The goal of this always is to take one topic, take a deeper dive on it so that you are the most educated agent on this topic out in the market. That way you can help people make powerful and confident decisions. You can help people navigate this market effectively. And I think this is a time right now where we need to help people navigate this market with everything going on. So that is certainly our goal there. Autumn, see you there in Canton, Ohio. Dennis, see you there in Rochester. Grateful for both of you joining, and there's so many others joining right now. I'm going to give it just a second to let folks join. And do this for me too. Share this deep dive here on Facebook. If you know somebody that needs to see it, or maybe tag somebody in it that needs to hear this message about the election. Kevin, see you there. Bruce, Joanne, see everybody there. Great to have you on this morning. We're going to be talking about the election. If you didn't hear that, to get folks out there. Scott, see you there in Destin, Florida. Scott, I should have looked you up. I was in Destin last week briefly. Had sort of a change in plans to my schedule. I'll tell you about that in just a minute as we wrap up the deep dive, but hope all is well down there. But listen, let's talk about the election. I'm going to share my screen, give you the slides like we always do. If you're a KCM member, you can go in and download all of these slides and use them as you're talking to people. I want to say a couple of things about the next few minutes that we spend together, and maybe a way to listen on this deep dive. First is, how can I listen from a perspective that many people will have the question, how does the election affect the real estate market? Now, here's the interesting thing about that. They may have the question, but they may never ask you. Our job a lot of times as educators is to bring the questions to the forefront, that we have the information and the sort of insights and education to people, maybe even before they bring the question. Maybe they ask you, but maybe they don't. Second, listen with this mindset. How does this information help somebody that maybe I'm working with, or maybe somebody that I've spoken to, make a decision? Does it change things? Does it give me information that I maybe otherwise didn't have, so that I can make the best decision for me and my family relative to buying or selling a home? I think if we can do both of those things, we can then guide people in this market very, very confidently. But this is a question, this is a topic that is going to gain steam as we go throughout the year, leading up to the November presidential election. And I think it's one that we need to keep top of mind. So many people joining. Thank you for sharing where you're from and where you're watching from. So good to see. I mentioned this before. Tag somebody, share this live with folks that need to hear it. Maybe you've had a conversation with people, but we're going to be talking all about how the 2024 election will affect the real estate market. I'm going to spend the next few minutes going over that. If you're a KCM member, you can grab all of these slides and use those in everything you're doing. We're also putting out a ton of content on blogs and Real Talk scripts and things, social posts that you can use as well. But I'll start here with the CEO of Lexard Capital Management. He said it really, really well. Presidential election years affect the national housing market and mortgage rates through three interrelated channels: uncertainty, policy expectations, and consumer confidence. I'm going to come back to these in just a second. He goes on to say, this is because consumers may choose to postpone major purchases or sales until they gain greater confidence in the country's direction. So what really he's saying, there are the three things: uncertainty. we've always said at Keeping Current Matters, in times of uncertainty, people follow the certain, right? And there's so much uncertainty in any election on who's going to win, and if you think your person's going to win, you think the other candidate's going to win, you have sort of thoughts about the direction and where we're going relative to policy, which is the next one, policy expectations. That is, how favorable do I believe this candidate is to the policies that I believe in? There was a study done about 4 years ago from the University of Michigan that said, depending on where the county leaned in their voting effort, they were maybe leaned Republican, leaned Democrat, whoever won in the White House. So if a Democrat won, you'd see more housing starts, you'd see more permits, you'd see more activity in that county. For a Republican one, you'd see more activity in a Republican leaning county, meaning I am more favorable to the policy of the candidate that I sort of voted for. And that makes sense, right? But things certainly fall along party lines relative to how we believe this will be in our business favorable to housing. And then third, consumer confidence. Do I believe the economy and everything is heading in the right direction? And certainly people have opinions about that. And this is a topic that people will be vocal about. And we want to be able to engage them on that. So 3 areas there: uncertainty, policy, and consumer confidence. And the reality is any election cycle has always had issues that we would deal with. Our team, our research team did a phenomenal job on all this information. Just a huge shout out to Jamie and to Alex, to Kate, and everybody that's worked on these slides to get them out because it helps. But if you go back in election cycles, there's always been some sort of issue we've dealt with. If you look at this right here, 2008, we certainly know that global financial crisis, recession, the housing crisis in 2008. 2012 fiscal cliff, healthcare expansion by the Supreme Court, the European debt crisis. 2016 Brexit, that was around, if you remember that. 2020, we all remember that, the pandemic. And right now in 2024, wars in the world, high inflation. Now we come down off that inflation, but inflation is certainly a topic that still gets discussed. And all of these things affect how people feel about buying or selling a home. But let's hop into some of the great graphics that will be used, I think, no doubt, over the next several months to explain this market. And really what I want to give you is a way to answer some questions where you can say, typically, this is what happens during an election cycle. Because people have an opinion about it. The first question you always want to ask in that is, tell me what you've heard. Tell me what you've heard about this election. Tell me what you've heard about the real estate market so that I can then explain it to you. Allie Wolf said, usually home sales are unchanged compared to a non-election year, with the exception being in November. In an election year, November is slower than normal. And so what Allie Wolf is saying is what people essentially do in November during the election is they put their hands in their pocket and they say, you know what, I'm going to wait and see how this all turns out. I'm going to wait and see how things go so that, maybe I feel more confident, maybe I'm uncertain on how they're going to go, and I'm going to make a decision after that. And I'll explain that here in just a minute. But here's the factual data look at how sales are affected in a presidential election year. This shows the seasonal drop in sales in presidential election years. On the left there in the gray bar are non-election years, 1963 to 2019, the change in sales from October to November. So in a typical year, non-election year, sales go down about 10% October to November, 9.8%, you see it right there. In an election year, go down about 15%. So a little bit more, not dramatic, but again, people sort of say, okay, we're going to pause and see how things turn out. We're going to pause and see what happens because that may, dictate what we do. It usually does not change people's minds. I think there is a lot of evidence to prove that. It just pushes it off a little bit. And here's one of the big takeaways from that in a fact that I think we ought to be sharing. Home sales went up the year after the election in 9 of the last 11 presidential elections. So if you take the year of the election, you take the year after, 9 out of 11 years, home sales went up. So if somebody were to say, okay, how does the election affect home sales? My answer would be typically home sales go up the year following. 9 out of 11 last presidential elections. This comes from NAR and HUD. You can always go in and grab the reports and the notes of all these slides if you're a KCM member. But that's how I want to answer that question. They went down in 2 years. So again, typically too, I'll tell you this, the first year in a 4-year cycle of a president's term is usually the best year in housing. Now, I do not think that is going to be the case this year, because I think we're in a market that's going to continually get better over the next several years. And I think we'll see more homes sold each year. But it's a great facts, great piece of information to get out in front of people and talk about this election cycle. Second piece here, this is really good from Lion Brunquist. An election year doesn't alter the pricing trend that's already happening in the market, right? So it's not like elections have this massive impact on prices. Matter of fact, home prices went up in 7 of the last 8 presidential election cycles the year after. What's the one exception? 2008. A little bit going on in housing that year, right? But each year, besides 2008, 7 of the last 8 cycles, prices have gone up the year following. And that's existing home sales right there coming from NAR. What about new home sales? Well, new home prices went up in 10 of the last presidential elections, with the one exception being 2008. Again, a little bit going on in real estate right there. So how do I answer that question about pricing? Typically, home prices have gone up the year following an election cycle. So does that help somebody make a decision about their housing? Does that inform you in a way that I can educate you about what's around the corner? Ali Wolf went on to say, in December following an election and in the following year, the sales that are lost during November are recovered. It isn't that consumers say, I'm nervous and I never want to buy. They say, I'm nervous. Let's just wait and see how things play out. That's the part where I said people sort of put their hands in their pocket and they're like, okay, I want to wait and see. I want to see how this all turns out, and then I'll make my decision. I think this is an important point, and I'm going to share a story in just a minute that I think really sums this up. But our job right now is to be ready for that, to be the educator, to get this message out into the market, because I think this is the things that are top of mind for people. And like I started off today saying, this might be a question that somebody never asks you, but it's on their mind. It's what they're thinking about. One other piece that I'll give you here on the election, this is an interesting one, are mortgage rates. And this is a look at mortgage rates from July to November of election years, going all the way back to 1980. And mortgage rates have decreased leading up to 8 of the last presidential election cycles. Now, I'll tell you, if you want to get the conspiracy theorists up, then this is the one to do it with. I do not think there is a correlation between an election cycle and mortgage rates coming down, but you certainly can see there's a consistent trend there in 8 of the last presidential elections. Maybe in a marginal way they've come down. I do believe we're in an environment right now where we will see mortgage rates come down between here and November. And so again, I want to educate people. I want to show people this. I'm studying this. I understand this. I know what's happening right here. And that's your job right now, is to get this information out into the market and help people understand it. The bottom line, I think, for the election, Bankrate summed it up. They said, for most Americans, election results will have little direct effect on their income and therefore should not significantly impact their decision to buy or sell a home. And I think that's true. I think this is a topic that many people want to talk about, but by and large, it's not going to have a tremendous effect on the housing market. Now, I think we need to be vocal about this. I think we need to engage people on it and be prepared to say, well, look, I've looked at the studies of what's happened in prior elections. Typically, here's what's happened with sales. Typically, here's what's happened with prices. Typically, here's what's happened with mortgage rates. Let's talk about your situation and how we help you make the best decision for you and your family in buying a home. I was talking earlier about this past week. I was on my way to Miami and to do an event in Miami. Got a lot of rain. If there's anybody that is on the line watching the deep dive today from Miami, certainly I know there's a lot of storms that were passing through there. They canceled the event, and I rerouted to go see another KCM client. Got to share this message with their team on Friday, and there were several agents that said, you know what, I'm going to use this to be able to go out and educate a couple of specific people that I'm working with right now for this reason. One, so that I don't have to convince anybody to do anything. If I educate people and I'm the educator, they can make the best decision for themselves about what they should do when buying and selling a home. And that's our job. I also shared this story, and KCM founder Steve Harney shared it so many times. This is a great example of the analogy of real estate being more like an Apple store, not a McDonald's. If you take the example of living in a town where a storm blows in, and let's say that everybody gets stuck in their homes for a couple of days and can't go anywhere, McDonald's loses that business. The Apple store never does. You see, when you're stuck at home, you don't decide not to eat. You just eat at home. You have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home. And McDonald's will never get that back. But if you were going to go buy an iPad at the Apple store, you just delay that purchase, right? It happens a couple of days or maybe a week later when you can get back out and you can go do it. That's how we operate. And if I were to sum up how the election cycle affects real estate, it's that. It's that maybe some people wait towards the end of the year and they're like, you know what, I want to see how all of this pans out. I want to see who gets elected. I want to see what happens, all the emotions tied to an election. But it doesn't alter their decision. It doesn't change the reason that they decide to buy or sell a home. And that's what we need to understand, be able to engage on, and help people navigate this market. I think this is the market right now, this summer, we're at the midpoint of the year, that more than ever, we need to be the educator. There's so much information out there about our business with the NAR settlement. There's so much information about how unaffordable it is to buy a home. Our job is to be vocal and be the educator to the clients we serve. I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll take this information and get it out in the market so that folks can make the best decision on their home. We start the deep dive every week to talk about the things that are most important in real estate, and I believe this is one of the most important topics now and over the next several months. And more than ever, share this with somebody that needs to hear it, so that we, can make a positive impact out in the world through folks that are buying and selling homes. It's so fun to be here with you. We'll see you back next Monday on the deep dive, and take care.